Okay.
All right. So just to start off, you write two separate columns for iIrish, so we can kind of begin with the Speak Irish column. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
That came about because of the Speak Irish Cleveland classes. I guess it's been 8 or 9 years ago. John asked me if I would be willing to do like a little paragraph of Irish phrases, the meaning and the word in Irish, the meaning in English, and then like a phonetic um, explanation as far as pronunciation. So we started out, the first few columns I did weren't even, I didn't even have a byline or anything. They were a paragraph or two at the most. And it was just things like please and thank you and how to say hello and goodbye, just real basic stuff like that. And then after doing that for a couple of months, uh, he asked me if I could make that column into like a regular column, and write 1,200 words or so, a month on Irish language. So I started doing that, and it can be kind of difficult at times to do a introductory language column and never really go too much beyond an introductory level. But that's really all the column was supposed to be, is just an introduction to the language and more or less to get people interested in the class, to enough to come and check the class out and see if it's something that they want to do.
Yeah, and could you tell me more about the Irish language class that you teach?
That's been going on for 10 or 11 years now. And basically it's an introduction to conversation. So we don't get too much into grammar, but it's kind of, if you were going to take a trip to Ireland, or into the Galtech, that you would be able to get by, with just basic stuff. It's by no means is it a complete language course. We've got a couple of students that have been there since the very beginning, but usually what happens is people join the class for the like a 10-week session, maybe do one or two sessions. It depends on what the interest is. Everybody has a different approach to why they're taking the class. Some people it's just they think it'd be kind of cool. And when I got started seriously about when I first joined the class, I had kind of dabbled in Irish language since I was in high school, but was never real serious about learning it. A phrase here, or, um, an old saying, a channel, would be things that I liked. But then I saw the ad for the class originally, and my goals were rather realistic because I thought we have Irish wolfhounds. I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to be able to tell my dogs to sit or stay in Irish. And I thought if I can go do that, learn a couple of words of Irish, maybe go have a beer or a whiskey or something that night at the class and meet a couple of new people, then it would be worth the 10-week investment. So all that stuff I accomplished my first night, and it's I over that 10 weeks I really fell in love with the language, and have stuck with it since.
Well, and sorry if I misunderstood. Do you teach the class or are you just a part of it?
Technically, I'm like the head of the language class. I have another young woman that helps. We also have other students that participate, though, as far as I have one woman that um, what she does is she prepares like a 5 or 10 minute thing on a weekly basis that's more about Irish history, Irish culture, very little about the language, but just things that, you know, instead of it just being a whole evening of Irish language, that we can do some other things. Recently, we just had a couple of musicians, local Irish musicians, come and play for the one evening. One of our other students is from Ireland. She taught everybody a song that she had learned as a child in Sligo. So that was kind of neat. She got everybody singing along. We've had local playwrights that came and talked to the class. We've had Dacre Stoker, who was the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker.
Mhm.
He actually did a Zoom meeting with our class and
That's
talked
so
to
cool.
everybody for about an hour and a half or so. So we try to mix things up a little bit. As far as what I actually do at the class, I do teach the very basic introductory part of the class. Um, so if you come in and don't know a word of Irish or know just a little bit of it, that's basically what I do. After you're with me for maybe 3 or 4 sessions, uh, then we move you to more of an intermediate group where they do a little bit more translation, get into a little bit more grammar, things like that. Just kind of build on it that way.
Oh, that's interesting. It sounds like your background in the Irish language began with this class.
No, no,
No.
it started way before that. I was probably high school age when I first heard Irish. That was at the old Irish American Club when it was down on Madison Avenue. Um, and it just kind of intrigued me then. I've always been a fan of Irish mythology. So if you've ever read any of the Irish tales, you look at some of the names and the places and try to pronounce that with just an English background is very difficult. So that's probably where my interest first took hold. And back then too, you could go to the library, get cassettes and books. That I did a little bit of that, but I didn't get real serious about it till about 10 years ago. So,
It and just kind of moving into your second column that you write, Cleveland Comhrá. Um,
yes,
could you tell us a little bit about that?
I was set up. That's how that came about.
Mhm.
um, Brian and I were out having dinner one night, and I was very happily munching away on my cheeseburger and drinking my beer. And John started to tell me how he was losing a couple of columnists, and that he had this idea for this other column about just getting out and talking to people in the community and things like that. And I said, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea." And then he said, "Good. Can you have the first one to me in a couple of weeks?" And I laughed at him. Uh, I said, "I'm not a writer, John. That's not anything I ever attempted, ever really wanted to do." Um, but I thought about it for a couple of days, and I called him back, and I asked him again. I said, what is it that you really are looking for?" And he's, just like interviewing people in the community. And I said, "Well, I can't do that all the time." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, whatever you want. You can kind of write about whatever you want as long as it has something to do with, you know, Irish American culture or Irish culture." I've always been a fan of history, um, music, and all kinds of different things that, have piqued my interest over the years. So that's basically all that column has become. I have done, quite a few interviews. I've talked to some really interesting people over the years, but most of the time, the columns come about because of either something I've read or somebody sends me something and I research that, and that's what the column's about. I think the best part about that um, is that there's a deadline. So it kind of pushes me to do the research, do the reading that otherwise I might just, come home at night and I'm too tired. I'll do it some other time and
Yeah.
never get around to it. So
Mhm.
for me, the best part about writing either one of the columns is actually what I get out of it,
Yes,
not so much what somebody else gets out of it.
right. It's forcing you to really look into those things that sound interesting to you. Yeah, just
Mhm.
like you said, having that deadline, it's nice. And how did you connect with iIrish?
Through the class, as, originally as a member of the class. When we did our first the very first one was a 10-week class, and there's myself and another woman, well, actually 2 other women that were in the class, and when it ended, we had, all signed up for the next 10-week session, and what had happened is we got there that night when the class was supposed to start, and the person that was supposed to teach the class didn't come back. So, we were all, really kind of disappointed, the 3 of us, and decided that we would just start meeting at McIntyre's every Tuesday night and study on our own. So we did that for a little bit. In the meantime, John O'Brien kept looking for another instructor. Um, we did get an instructor. Paul Curran was a great, great guy. Unfortunately, he was not the healthiest of people, and he wasn't able to really focus too much on the class itself. So anyway, he agreed to do the class if I agreed to help him. So at first, that's all I was doing was kind of organizing what I thought would be a good lesson plan for the evening. And Paul would get there, and I would explain, well, this is what we'd like to work on, and he would kind of run with it, and I helped him kind of keep focus as to what we were doing.
Mhm.
And we did that for a year or two, and then Paul passed away, and then I ended up just kind of taking over, the entire thing at that time. So, but it's I've never really taught before, so it was an interesting uh, thing to approach.
Yeah, sure. And what is your own like Irish background?
I had a grandparents on both sides, my mom and dad. The only ones that I really have, my grandfather on my mother's side was one of 14. So his his older brothers were from Ireland. He was born here in Pennsylvania. Um, my father's grandfather, he came from Cork in like 1847, so he came during the famine years. But it was never really a big thing in our house. It was we grew up in West Park, so it was like you just everybody you knew was Irish Catholic. And I think there was a kid on the next street that was Italian, and that was that's just the way it was. I mean, our whole street was, Carneys, Kilbanes, McMahons, the one house after the other. So
And and what would you say it means to be Irish?
um, I think it's important, no matter what your ethnicity is to kind of hang on to it because as generations go, it's always going to dissipate somewhat. So you're not going to have that real um, same sense of belonging to anything. It's going to be like a just big soup pretty soon, where everything's blended together, and I don't think it'll be as strong in future generations as. But that's part of life.
Mm.
That's part of what America is too.
And
So
and if you had to say what the most meaningful part about like being a part of the Irish community is, what would you say that is like to you?
well, I think mostly just the people that I've met and really gotten to know, because of it. People that otherwise I probably, if it was just the people that I run across in my daily job, um, you know, I would probably be shy a lot of friends that I have now. So I guess that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, I mean, even with this language class that you've been a part of, it sounds like such a cool thing that um social group where you're not just hanging out, but you're also learning together.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's different for everybody that, comes in there. I mean, there's, that's I did a column a few years back about why people show up to the class, and everybody has their different reasons. A lot of them, it's because, they had a parent or a grandparent that spoke the language, um, or, like me, they wanna be able to read things that are written in Irish. Some of the books that came out of the Blaskets, originally were written all in Irish. So I think if you can read something in the language that it was originally written in, you get more out of it than an English translation. But we have people that I'm sure it's just a social thing too, that, come and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's, I said, I try to make the class more than just Irish language. There's a little bit of everything, maybe not some of the Dracula and Bram Stoker stuff that I bring to the class is everybody's cup of tea, but he was a Dublin born writer, and 126 years later, 127 years later, that book is still you know pretty much making a statement. So,
Mm.
but I don't know.
Yeah, and I was reading your column on that from October. What was the other kind of version of that story that you talked about? It was with Camilla, I believe.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's another.
Mm.
Carmilla is a that's another that preceded Dracula.
Right.
But that's another Irish author, Sheridan Le Fanu. Um, and Carmilla, I mean, that's probably one of the earliest Victorian vampire stories. For its time, it was pretty racy, and there's a lot of people that read different things into what the story was supposed to be, but sometimes, a good story is just that, just a good story.
Right. Yep. Well, that those are all my questions that I had. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
No, not really. I think for the most part, I'm a pretty boring individual. So it's just the people that I can, meet and introduce others to. I think it's the whole reason I keep doing it. Like I said,
Okay.
the research is probably the best part, my favorite part of the whole process. Um, the people that you get to meet, the I think every once in a while I go back and the column I'm working on right now. I've gone back and I've been looking at past columns I did for mostly environmental things. I was working on one for Earth Day for April, and go back and I can actually see the change in my writing since 2015 and later columns. So I must be learning a little bit anyhow. But
Right.
yeah,
No,
it's interesting.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Being able to pursue those interests, having a deadline, continually learning new things. Good stuff.
Yep.
Well, thank you for having this meeting with me and uh, uh, tell me about your columns.
All right, Ava. Thank you.
Yes. Have a good night.
You too. Bye bye.